Hi, welcome to our channel. A job applicant applies for a job. He or she would be selected to an organization. Broadly, what we have done is we have classified them into whether it's an established organization or a new organization. Now, the purpose of this particular discussion is to compare the two. We hope that this will be useful to you. Suppose it's about the two types of organization. Then what we have done is we have tried to list down the pros and the cons of getting into each of them. Now let's look at getting into an established organization. Established organizations usually manage to pay a good salary. The job security is good enough. And of course, these days no job is secure. Still then, there's a fair level of job security. There's a process to the hiring and of course a process to the firing as well. Branding. Now it would be easy for you to explain it to others, like which organization do you work for? And people would have a fair idea, okay, this person works for this particular organization and this is what this organization does. So this person would also be doing that kind of a job, a similar job. Or people get a fair track of how your career would evolve. That means you would get some kind of default respect or recognition or even acknowledgement from people around you. Established organizations are usually led by people who are high achievers. They have already established themselves in the job market, in the fraternity. You get a chance to work with them or in their teams. So you're likely to get high profile or specialized exposures. That means you may be able to attend a good meeting where other high profile people are attending, or you go to a university, learn new skills, just by virtue of being affiliated to this particular organization. The fourth one is these organizations are very well resourced. That means you get some flexibility around, if suppose you lose some resources somewhere, you waste something. These organizations can take that hit. Similarly, they have all the equipments. They can support you with laptops, with internet supply, good seating place, a good pantry, maybe some good leave policies, maybe some movement around some vehicle allowances. So established organizations can afford all of that, and hence they are more comfortable to work with, possibly. Defined role, yes. So when you get an established organization, very likely your job is very well defined, you're cut out or you're selected for a particular job, and that's what you do. You know exactly what you'll do each morning, and then there will be some accountability or monitoring happening on you from time to time, but possibly not on a day-to-day basis. It also serves like if, that means you may have some leeway for not being accountable at times. You may commit mistakes and just get away with it because it does not count as a major damage to the organization. These organizations have a set culture and are very structured. So that means you already have some templates, some forms, some policies, some HR manual, some leave allowances, leave policies. Those things are there. And there's a culture in the organization. How you talk to people, how you meet people, how you report, all those things are there. And it's not much of personalization. It's more like a system in place. Similarly, they are very well structured. That means there is a hierarchy and there is a clear role description for each hierarchy, who does what. So role conflicts are rarer here. And of course, the feel. That means the ambience. These organizations being well resourced, well established, well located, valued. The feel of being in such a place is different altogether. This may be a very good motivating factor in itself. That means you get a very good sofa to sit, have a cup of coffee, relax a bit, and then again go back to your work. Things could be there. If we look at the pros of established organization, much of this would count as the cons of new organizations. That means new organizations or startups may not be able to offer a very good salary, so salary could be low. There could be high work pressure because these are under-resourced. Human resource is also a resource. These people have to perform to maintain that competitive edge. So usually these organizations, teams in these organizations are under high work pressure. But of course they're very motivated. So that zeal keeps them pushing harder. But for someone who is not much motivated or still not bought into the vision of the organization, we find that the work pressure is quite overwhelming. The other thing is limited high profile exposure. These are small organizations, tinklers. So nobody actually, much of the places do not acknowledge their existence also. So your chances of being invited to a high profile meeting or attending or being on a panel on the stage is really low here. Some exposures could happen impromptu. on an ad hoc basis, but high profile exposures are less likely here as compared to what an established organization could provide. Your role could be ill-defined and at times may feel directionless. That means today morning you go and you work as a data analyst. Tomorrow morning you go and you see that you are actually minuting another meeting. So since these are small size teams usually, so cross functionality is there. So you have to multitask, function across silos. Those things could be there, and that may just feel that you do not have a very well defined role, and some role conflicts could also happen. Job insecurity. Now this, I'm not saying that these organizations just hire and fire impromptu, but what really happens is these organizations are financially unstable. So if organizations are not financially stable, they can't really secure the job, they can't ensure that the job, they can't assure you a very continued job tenure, but at the same time most organizations may manage to grow, and that's when your job gets secured. It also depends on the value that you add, how quick a learner you have been in the organization and what kind of value you have been adding. Over optimization of resources. This is one constant. I'll say that this is a trait of startup organizations. They always try to over optimize. Now suppose it's always about working around and improving the efficiency without maximizing the cost. So frugality is the other word, and some people may not like a frugal lifestyle. The tolerance for frugality varies from person to person. Of course, this entire explanation that I'm trying to give is with a disclaimer that it also depends on the employee, how he or she perceives these pros and cons. So these are subjective at times, but with that disclaimer, I'm trying to enlist all that is sort of generalizable, right? So over optimization of resources is the tolerance to frugality is again an attribute that is dependent on the employee. The last one that I've enlisted here is evolving organizational culture and structure. That means the organization does not have a set culture or a structure yet, and it is all evolving, and you have to adapt to that change. So there's a constant change, or maybe a churn also happening around. That means new people are coming in, some people are leaving, a lot of rethinking or revisiting the decisions. Those things could be there. But this is also an opportunity of a sort, because if organization's culture is evolving and you are part of that organization, you can be the change agent here. So you can be an influencer within the organization. Similarly, without a structure, at times working within an organization that does not have a structure, that is very nebulous, could be difficult. That said, what are then the pros? Why should one work for a startup organization? Because if there are so many cons, what is the advantage that startup organizations provide? One, these organizations are very agile and adaptive. Being small, they can quickly adapt to change. That means they can also incorporate creativity and can at times prove disruptive. If there is a disruptive technology or a disruptive service that the organization has brought into the ecosystem, recognition is very likely. So there is a high chance that if this organization is able to strategically and confidently be creative and disruptive by taking judicious risks, which they can actually, they have an appetite for this, then the identity built up, these organizations can actually provide to the individual is really, really high. That means high risk, high rewards. The other one is fast decision making and action. That means you don't have to wait for approvals here. Usually there is just one level up and you get an approval. So decision making is really fast. Change adaptation is again fast. That means you can actually propose ideas and immediately see the translation of those ideas happening within the organization, which in big organizations have to wait for the approval of seniors. The third one, which I count as the most important one, is multifunctionality. That means you have actually a chance to dirty your hands. You do many things in an organization, not just at the horizontal level, that means at your peer level, but at times in a vertical scale. That means you work almost as a office support staff to the highest executive. You get a cross-functionality, multifunctionality exposure. This is quite important for youngsters, because what really happens is if you get a early grounding in multifunctionality, you then are positioned to take up higher ranks in other organizations or within this organization as well. Similarly, since you have actually made your hands dirty on different activities, you become a very good mentor to youngsters later on. So if you do this at a young stage and you get good at it, 5 years or 10 years down the lane, when youngsters join your team, you'll be able to mentor them because you have developed empathy The fourth point that I've listed here is high growth potential. I already visited this here, that if your organization really clicks or your strategy really clicks or you are a very promising member in the team, your chances of growing is higher. What we have observed is smaller organizations provide very good designations, bigger organizations provide relatively low designation. For example, if you've just now completed your graduation or maybe post-graduation and you join a new organization, you may get a designation of assistant vice president or a senior position in a startup, whereas in this kind of organization, in established organization, you get a lower rank. Now, this one, the bonding between colleagues is again another attribute of startups, because you develop bonding when emotions are involved, and startups are emotion driven, passion driven. They celebrate victories, they also get a bit disheartened with failures. But of course, that does not prevent them from trying again, but then it's a constant turmoil of emotions, and that's when bonding between colleagues happens. Being a small team and spending extra hours with one another, you try to develop that kind of family bonding, and that's when you have built your own support ecosystem. Here, at times, you could be anonymous, like you could be just one in a crowd. Now, in a new organization, I've already talked about the designation, but with the designation, you can also get exposure. That means even if you don't get to attend high profile meetings, but the meetings that you attend, you represent your organization as a high ranking person. That means you are accountable for the decisions, you also be a part of the decision making process on behalf of the organization. This one point is flexibility. Being a small organization, these people can take immediate decisions, can customize their decisions according to the employee's requirements. That means they can offer some kind of flexibility. Now, if we talked about the pros of established organizations and the pros and cons of new organizations, what are the cons of established organizations? Now, these are again much attributes of the culture of the organization. We can't really generalize this, that's why we kept it at the end of it. But there are certain views that established organizations, very big organizations, usually end up being, not usually, at times, end up being very bureaucratic. That means too many permissions, too many hierarchies. You need to be very cognizant of not offending any particular hierarchy. So these are very bureaucratic at times. When there are too many people, there is a chance of politics, office politics happening there. That means it could be for good or bad, but you may have to have a good amount of emotional intelligence, social intelligence to maneuver through this office politics, which can, like, if you're good at it, it may work in your benefit. To your benefit, if you're bad at it, you may be a victim of this, but still then it's there. But they also have HR managers to handle this, and systems. Monotony. Now suppose we join an organization, a team, but not able to climb very fast in the organization because the organization is not able to evolve as fast, then one may feel that the job profile is a bit monotonous. This again is something that you could do about, like you invest in your own constant learning. You also see that there are too many things happening in the organization, so you have an opportunity of being exposed to all of that. So if you keep your senses open and you have an open mind, you may be able to break off from this monotony. There is a risk of slow growth. Yes, this is again the same part of the story, another side of the coin, but mostly so. And the other one is less experimentative. That means at times gets a bit overbearing on the young mind who questions dogma. The young mind questions dogma. That means you are at times impatient and you want, like, why do they do it this way? Why not this way? But nobody is there to rationalize why they did the way they're doing. Right? You don't get a rationale why these organizations are not as much experimentative. But still then, established organizations are usually slow movers and hence less experimentative. Now with this kind of a background, we hope that when you are applying for a job, and we wish that you land multiple job offers, this simple grid may help you in providing a heuristic to make a decision which is well informed. Thank you.